Hello, guys, and welcome back to the LFC Transfer Room. Today, we have another addition to the series. Who is? This time, we're going to be looking at Liverpool signing Alexis Mac Allister. We're joined by the Social Room owner and Brighton and Hove Albion fan, Ryan. Ryan is going to give us his expert view on what Alexis Mac Allister can offer to Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool side next season. So, without further ado, let's get right into the video. So, Ryan, for those who maybe aren't as familiar with Alexis Mac Allister's come up with Brighton, can you give us a quick overview of his career and how he, made the step up?
Yeah, I mean, he came in 2019, somewhere around that area, and he signed in from Argentinian Santos or whatever they're called, the juniors, I think. And it was one of those where you look at him as a wonder kid and you think, okay, it's all well and good being a wonder kid, but it was before we'd really developed too many players. Very raw sort of at the beginning, didn't have too much of an instant impact or anything. Obviously went on loan to Boca and did well there, came back. And I think there was a bit of hype coming, and I don't know if you know this, but we put in a lot of bids to get him back, which sounds kind of weird, but we're trying to terminate his loan. So we almost bid for our own player to come back from the loan, which is a very weird one. But yeah, he did end up coming back, obviously, in the January and started getting settled in. But then obviously COVID struck, and he was decent. You could see he had touches of class, but it wasn't one where he came in and just stole the show like maybe some people think. He was definitely a bit of a gradual process, proof that we needed to grow players a bit, carefully and make sure that we don't just put too much pressure on, particularly young players coming from South America. Obviously, it's a big step up coming over here. But no, he was a very quality player from the day one. You could tell he had a good attitude about him. But then sort of as it went along, I'd say last season he really came into it a lot more. Season beforehand, I mean, including last season as in the 21-22 season, and then obviously the season just gone. Those couple of seasons, he was by far one of our best players, which was kind of weird because we've gone from having a player that was being edged in to being one of our best. And it was a real dramatic turn from sort of 2020-21 season to all of a sudden, the following year, he's being played a little bit deeper. And it was credit to Graham Potter, in fairness, much as I don't like the guy, did well in spotting that he could do a job a bit deeper. And then De Zerbi sort of introduced him to playing the ball out a lot more carefully, taking bigger risks as well, and just overall linking the game up a lot more. And from there, you've seen the Alexis that is now, and obviously goes on to the World Cup. And I, in my opinion, anyway, I thought he was probably one of the best players in the World Cup, and that's not just me being biased. I did watch a lot of it, and I thought he was fantastic for Argentina, and I couldn't believe my eyes some of the time. In all honesty, I did think after the World Cup, which is quite weird in this, he gets a lot more attention. But I do feel like he was better in the beginning end of the season to the end of the season, just purely on the basis that coming up to the World Cup, I was calling him our player of the year. Probably at the end of it, I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's Caicedo. So it was a bit of a strange one, really, because all of a sudden he's being linked more and more sort of focused after the World Cup, when I'd say he was probably playing at a lesser level, not a bad one, but a lesser level than he was doing beforehand. But it is what it is. He's done well. He's treated us very, very well. He's top professional. And obviously we shared the World Cup together as well at the Amex. So, credit to him for what he's done for us. And I hope for the best for him.
Yeah, you mentioned as well there, obviously he was used quite differently under Potter and De Zerbi. Can you kind of break that? I know he was playing a bit deeper with Caicedo under Potter and maybe a bit more further forward. What one do you think he really suited? Because obviously with the move into Liverpool, he's probably going to be a little bit more advanced than he was deeper, maybe a bit more relying on him. But as far as Brighton and obviously under two managers last season, what role did he shine in under Potter and De Zerbi?
I'd say it sounds mad because he wears number 10. I think everyone associates him to being a number 10, but I don't think he is. I think he's, for you, I think especially he's going to be really good in sort of linking that midfield up. Obviously, you signed Szoboszlai as well, and you've done notoriously very good in midfield. I think now, obviously, you've needed to transition, and Alexis comes in and does well in the 8 role. 6 role he can play as well. Did very well doing that under Potter. He's obviously been very used to playing with the ball at his feet, taking risks under De Zerbi. So I think that both of them have sort of complemented his game. But in all honesty, in front of goal, not the best. he scored quite a few. He's got some penalties to his name, but his expected goal rate to actual goals is not great. He's not the best finisher in the world. You're not going to see too many goals, although he does score some worldies, some free kicks here and there, but it's very, very rarity. Perhaps that's something Klopp could get out of him, because notoriously he has got players into scoring goals. If you go back a few years, especially Jota, I remember when he signed him, it was all of a sudden he was banging goals left, right and centre. And that was a big question marks over him at the time. So you never know, he could have a similar impact. But he's not going to be a goal scorer for you, at least in Brighton experience, but he is going to be a great, great player in midfield and linking the play up and carrying the ball, playing passes, etc.
Yeah, obviously, you've mentioned, maybe a couple of weaknesses you might look at it there. On the flip side, what can he really offer to this Liverpool side? Liverpool have just signed, as you mentioned, Dominic Szoboszlai, who maybe is more of a attacking threat. Great through balls, great dribbling. What are kind of the traits that Jurgen Klopp can really hone in on and make sure that Mac Allister is, providing as much as he can to his Liverpool side next season?
One thing I'll say that's going to surprise you probably is he's strong. He doesn't look it, with all due respect, but he is very strong. He's very good on the ball, and he can carry the ball forward and sort of shake off a challenge, which is good. And he can also go in and put a challenge in, which is good. As I said, I don't think he's going to be a goal scorer. Perhaps, as you say, Szoboszlai is going to be the player that's going to maybe take that weight off him from being that person to do that. But yeah, I'd say what I've mentioned really is the link-up play, his ability to take the ball very deep and sort of play a risky pass, particularly to the defence, coming out of defence. Transition-wise, I'd say he's good. Caicedo carried that a lot too, so it's hard to just put it all on him. And I think that's ultimately where it's always going to be for me when I talk about Brighton players, is a lot of what we do comes from the team, it comes from the manager, it comes from the owners, etc. It's also sort of well drilled that all these players sort of have their attributes well-rounded by a well-rounded club, in that when they go to another one, you see Marc Cucurella as a prime example. He looked like probably one of the best left-backs in the league at Brighton under Graham Potter. And then he goes to Chelsea under Graham Potter and just looks half the player, if that. So it is hard to call, because we've had a lot of players move on and flop. I don't think Alexis will do that. At least I hope he doesn't, for his own sake. But yes, there's a few traits there that you could take. But ultimately, I think it's going to be down to how he's managed, because he's definitely one that needs an arm round him, probably, I would say.
Brighton fans, a lot of the time, from my perspective of it, when Caicedo kind of in January said he wanted to move, Cucurella as well wanted to move to Chelsea, Brighton fans maybe haven't been as loving towards them players, if you would say. There's been a bit of, you wanted to move, it is what it is. Mac Allister seems like the complete opposite of that. As a person, Liverpool is a very family club. It's, we back our players all the time, even if they're not off the pitch. Do you think that's kind of a situation that Mac Allister will kind of thrive into, say? Obviously similar to with Brighton, a lot of people seem to still love him, even though, he is moving. There's a lot of high praise there. But just on that, what is kind of Brighton's fans' opinion of him as a person?
No, he's top. He's top. And I think that's what's really carried this, and that you've noticed when, obviously, XYZ did leave, and we don't need to go into who, because everyone knows, when all of them did leave to a certain football club in the top six, you saw a very, very different reaction. And you didn't see any players putting out thank yous, really. You saw a little bit, but they were very, very half-hearted. Whereas now you've got a lot more, player love, fan love. Everyone wishes him the best. Everyone around the club wishes him the best. He's done so well for us, but ultimately, yes, it's good because he's treated us well. He's one that I could imagine that would come back at some day. I don't imagine it would ever be sour, unless obviously he comes and celebrates and puts his eye, but I can't see that ever happening. So yeah, he's been sort of that professional that you want. I'm guessing, as you say, in Liverpool, they do give you that vibe that you want as a player that thrives off, not attention, because that's wrong to say, but a bit of love, a bit of an arm around him. I think Klopp's also got that to him, in that he'd definitely give you that sort of passion and affection that you need when you need it. I think De Zerbi gave him that straight away, and you could see the difference in him. And I think ultimately that's what's helped him raise his game, is that he's been very connected. And I was at Villa away, and I saw Mac Allister in tears at the end of it. It does mean a lot to him. And part of me was saying, if you're going to be that upset, why don't you just stay? But it is what it is. But we'll see. Yeah, I hope the best for him. As I say, top guy.
Another talking point about this transfer was obviously the price tag. Brighton, very known for getting great prices out of players.
Yeah.
Discussions with Moises Caicedo upwards of 100 million now. There was a lot of varying reports with his price tag. I think it started out with like 55 million, then it dropped drastically to what a lot of Liverpool journalists now saying 35 million.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know much, but is it 35 million on its own, or is it like 35 million with add-ons, which is what I kind of assumed?
Yeah, it is. I think 20 million add-ons. I'm not going to claim to be ITK because I hate doing that, and I hate people that are, because there's so many on Twitter now, and they drive me insane. There's the Caicedo updates. Honestly, sometimes I want to throw my phone. But yeah, from my gauge, from what I've seen, is 20 million add-ons, 35 million flat. I'd imagine they're pretty lucrative add-ons. I don't think that we would let a player go for 35 million when he was, but then again, I look at it as I said before, he had no hype around him. And probably if he had 50 million, 60 million, whatever, I think we would have probably taken it. Not because I don't rate the guy, not because whatever, but I think there was no hype. And I think that he was probably the last on the agenda to ever be linked away. If anything, it was always Caicedo was the scare. And then all of a sudden, Mac Allister's gone. And I thought, okay, that came out of nowhere. But yeah, I think 35 million, plus the 20 million add-ons is the truth. I don't think that would be any other. And I don't think that's unreasonable anyway.
Yeah, no, I think most Liverpool fans are in agreement that even 55 million, for such a shrewd negotiator like Bloom, it's a great deal no matter what. One other thing, Liverpool made last season a bit of an anomaly. Finishing outside the top four, where usually Champions League finals, 99 points, not winning the league. Do you think Caicedo's ready for that step up? If he isn't, do you think Liverpool maybe not being in the Champions League this season is going to be a good kind of, there's not as much pressure to maybe perform straight away as there would be if we were in the Champions League, for instance?
I know you meant to say Alexis before everyone gets on you in the comments, but I think possibly. I think ultimately he's at a big club, and when you're at a big club, you are more focused on. And this was always the biggest thing about when Potter left, when Cucurella left. Potter really, really, really couldn't deal with fans getting on his back at all. And you saw notoriously the boos at Potter, and it went absolutely viral in the media. And all of a sudden, like, everyone's thinking that we're some sort of ungrateful football club. And we had 23 games that win, and we booed once. And I think it was about 100 fans, if that, 10 fans in the West Stand booed. So that was always inevitable. I think with Liverpool, yes, you've had a weird drop off. I think that it was probably expected based on the fact that you didn't replace sooner. Sort of, your players were aging. You probably should have made them changes sooner, and then maybe it was a bit of a kick to say, okay, we need to snap into gear. Seems like that's happened now. But ultimately, he is one of the key players that's going to be able to, or expected to, change you. So there is expectation, and there is, the pressure of being in the limelight. Ultimately, it's a massive club. You've got probably the biggest club in the league, in the world, easily, and that's if you're wearing the number 10 for Liverpool, expectations should carry with that. And I think that as much as I like Mac Allister, if you're going to take the jump, expect whatever you get back. And that's what I've said about Potter. That's what I've said about everybody else. Expect what comes back, because that's what you've thrown yourself into. And if you want to swim, then swim. And we'll see if he does.
Yeah, and finally, what are your expectations for Mac Allister this season? Maybe not so much goals and assists, but do you think he's going to be a main starter for Liverpool? Do you think obviously Liverpool and Brighton are going to be in the Europa League together?
Yeah.
Potential that we meet each other later in the rounds, but do you think he could be maybe he could go on to help Liverpool win the Europa League or maybe even challenge for the Premier League again?
I think it's going to be tough. I don't think you're going to be challenged for the title. I think you should, because I think that that's ultimately where you are as a football club. You should be challenging for the title. I don't think you will actually win the title purely just because City are just different league, right? I think that's just the ultimate thing. And Arsenal obviously improving massively. If Chelsea don't sort out this year, then I think there is going to be big question marks over what's going on there. But you've got to be wanting to, because what's the point otherwise? Mac Allister wise, it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be, yes, he's probably going to start straight away, to answer your question, because he's good enough to. He's done it for Argentina. If he can play in Argentina in the World Cup and win it, he's got to be starting for Liverpool. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know when it comes to how he's going to perform, because I've seen so many players leave this club and just take a complete downturn. And I'm like, is that even the same guy? Bissouma, Cucurella, Ben White's done well. He's probably the only one that has. Dan Burn as well. But yeah, it's gonna be one I'm gonna be definitely watching very closely, because I do want to see how he gets on. As I said, I do wish him the best. But I do think there's added pressure purely because you have to bounce back on the back of last year and how good you have been. Because as well, Jurgen Klopp's going to be taking a lot of criticism, and he did last year, and he's been given sort of that grace. I think he deserved to. But ultimately, this year is the bounce back year. Otherwise, big changes are going to have to be made. And unfortunately, Alexis is a part of that bounce back, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I hope for the best for him. I don't know. I think that it ultimately depends on how much pressure is put on him. Because if there's a lot, I could see it going south. If it's not, and people just love him straight away, I can see him just fitting in like a glove, a bit like a Lallana sort of type. We'll see.
Thank you very much to Ryan for joining us today. Make sure you check out all his links below in the description. While you're down there, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe. Also, leave a comment. Do you think Alexis Mac Allister is going to be a good signing for Liverpool next season? But I've been Charlie. This has been the LFC Transfer Room. Thank you for watching.